Welcome to the Real Life Podcast at Hermitage Hills, where we have real honest conversations with real people about topics relevant for today. At Hermitage Hills, we desire to see people experience life change through Jesus Christ. For more information about our church and how you can be a part of the community here, visit hermitagehills.com/connect.
Hey, Pastor Pola here again with Real Life Podcast. It's real people telling real stories that have real impact. And on this episode of Real Life, I have with me today a friend and a brother, Steve Sakarapanee. And Steve, I just want to, let's start out so folks out there in the podcast world kind of know who you are. Tell me a little bit about maybe your background, where'd you grow up, a little bit about your family. Who is Steve Sakarapanee that these people are like, who is this guy?
Sure. Again, my name is Steve Sakarapanee. I'm a Tennessee Highway Patrolman. I have been on with the Department of Safety and Homeland Security for over 23 years now. Worked in various capacities, but about me, as far as I know, I'm the very first full-blooded Asian that the state has ever hired as a state trooper.
Awesome.
And so my background is that I was born in Thailand, immigrated to the United States with my parents in around 73. My mom is a Christian and was a Christian at the time, but my father was not really practicing any religion. He was raised a Buddhist. So the reason that my parents wanted to, or my mom wanted to come to the United States was to try to get my father away from his Buddhist background.
The influences? Yeah.
But so she talked him into it. I think women can do that to guys. It's pretty easy. And so they came to the United States. They came to Nashville specifically because my aunt and uncle were studying to be doctors at Vanderbilt. So that's what brought us to Nashville. But we've stayed. My parents were very educated people in Thailand, but English was not their primary language. They all learn English in grade school in Thailand, but it's kind of like us learning French and Spanish here. It's not like we can go and be fluent right away. But so they struggled with the language here and just their degrees not transferring here to the United States. And so they worked blue-collar jobs pretty much all of my life, until I'd say maybe 10 or 12 years ago, my dad actually became a Christian, and mom and dad started working for the United Methodist Church, and just doing ministry together, and their life has been a lot different since then, looked a lot different, and so that's where we are.
So you married? Got kids?
Married. Been married for, over...
Be careful, she's listening.
Yeah, over 24 years, almost 25 years married. Have two boys. They're both grown adults. One is married and doing well, and the other one's still in college.
Yeah.
So.
And the married one went to what school?
He actually attended and graduated the United States Military Academy.
Yeah.
So served in the Army. And
the youngest is in school where?
He is at Bethel University.
Yeah, playing football.
Yes.
Is this his last year to play football? Did I read that somewhere?
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yes, I think he's actually going to another team. Well, I think today he's signing a contract to be on a different team today. So.
Oh, really? Well, after this podcast, you'll have to talk about that more.
Sure.
I like to hear about that. So awesome. So again, how many years you been with the state troopers?
Over 23 years.
23 years. So First of all, let me say thank you on behalf of many who appreciate what you do and other men and women like you in the law enforcement. We appreciate your service. We appreciate your sacrifice. We appreciate where you guys are out there all the time, trying to make this world safer and being willing to do what it takes to be able to do that. So we say thank you. And the purpose of this podcast, this story from Steve, is obviously, the last year or so with all of the craziness with the pandemic, and then the different legal battles going on just recently in courtrooms from different people's perspective in the law enforcement. And it's in a day, Steve, honestly, so many things I find myself saying, I never thought this would happen.
Right.
Never thought we'd think this way. I never thought we would go here. And probably it's just foolishness on my part. But here's another situation where I never thought growing up. I mean, growing up for me was you respect law enforcement.
Right.
Law enforcement are good guys. If you need someone to trust, you can trust someone in law enforcement. Right. So let's just say this, and I mentioned this to you earlier. There's good and bad in everything, right? Let me talk about my own profession. I'm a pastor at a church. I've been in ministry for over 40 years, and there's a lot of really, really, really good people, but there are also some people that are not, for
Sure.
whatever reason. We got a few in my field that misrepresent and do things that harm my profession. There's good lawyers, bad lawyers. There's good doctors, bad doctors. There's good and bad in everything. Law enforcement, I've heard this, where law enforcement say we have a lot of really, 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 really good men and women in law enforcement. And there are some few that you'll find that aren't, just like in anything else. So, we're not trying to say today that everybody's perfect in every field, but we want to have an honest conversation. I want to have an honest conversation with you from your perspective. And not that your perspective is going to have the totality of everyone's thoughts. Like I was telling you a guy I met today and some of his thoughts, and I was trying to understand where he was coming from. And I guess, I want to be a person, I know you do too, who wants to listen well to understand.
Yes.
Not that I would agree, but at least I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. So when you think about, when you sum up this past year, the rioting, the confusion, the pandemic fears, from a policing perspective, from your profession, honestly, how are you thinking? How do you sum up these events over the last months and year or so with law enforcement and all that's been going on?
Sure. Well, this past year has definitely probably been one of the most challenging years for my profession. With, like you said, the pandemic, with so many violent encounters with police, and just the media and social media, and just technology in general, being able to spread a lot of information really, really fast. Whether it be good information, bad information, it's fast.
Right.
And so
gets out there before the facts get out there,
Yes, yes.
right? And I'm sure that's got to be frustrating to the men and women, in law enforcement. Even so much of the television shows, some that I watch. I mean, this is weaved into the storyline,
Yes.
and so much of it, and what, of course, Hollywood. We won't go there today, but for you, that's just got to be really frustrating. To get information out there that is no facts with it. It's just a video. You don't know what happened before. You don't know what happened after.
Right.
You really don't know what happened in any along the way. It's just, you just got this snippet
Right.
And you and I both know you could take snippets and make it say whatever you want it to say.
Right.
About anything in life, right? That's like people with the Bible, right? I mean, you can make the Bible say some really crazy stuff.
Yes.
If you don't have the context of what was said before or what was said after. You can do that with a lot of things, and that's got to be really frustrating. How are you and your fellow officers? And maybe you can't speak for them. How can you speak for yourself? How are y'all handling that? How does that?
I think that's a good question. It's a fair question. I think for me, and it may be for most police officers that are believers, it looks different for us. We're looking with a little bit more compassion and with trying to put on the lens of empathy as well. But it can, if we dwell on it, we can get frustrating. It can get depressing. But as believers, I think we just have to keep in mind that we know who the winner is
Right.
in the end.
Right. So tell me, when you work with yourself and other officers, you've been doing this for 23 years. I mean, if you were to, you can't speak for everybody. Nobody can. But you can. I think you got a heartbeat of the men and women you serve with, as a state trooper, and the other men and women I'm sure in law enforcement. In your opinion, what is their heartbeat? Why are they doing what they're doing? Well,
I think they started out with this career because they were called to be protectors. I think most of us have a need for justice, and we want to protect people that can't protect themselves. That's how we normally get started, because we're all government employees, which I mean and this is, I'm sure that 70 to 80% of police officers out there, when they began this career, were told it is an honorable career, but you're not going to get rich doing it. And so make sure this is what you want to do.
Right.
I mean, that's what I was told. Make sure. And I told both my boys who want to be in law enforcement, it has to be a calling, because you're not going to get rich, and there'll be tough days, tough nights, but what gets you through is that it's a calling. It's something that you were called to do. So
that's amazing, because it's very similar to my profession. I've heard that same thing. If you're gonna become in ministry, you're in a service place. You're trying to serve people, trying to help people. In some way, trying to protect people.
Yes.
In a spiritual way.
Yes.
You're a more physical way than maybe I would be, but sometimes in that as well. But that's where so many teachers, school teachers, they're helping, they're serving.
Yes.
It's not like so many who are in business, and their business is to make a profit, which nothing wrong with that. But the whole mindset, you said calling. I guess I don't want to be careful not to speak in what other people in business, like as far as a calling, but it's different to me. So, again, we see that, we appreciate that. So tell me, so these guys, men and women, I say the word guys, I don't mean males,
Sure.
but men and women, who, man, I want to protect, I want to help, I want to serve, major part. How do you think you are handling what's happening as far as what people are saying about law enforcement, the whole disrespect that I've seen, at least? How are you all handling that?
For the most part, I think we're trying to trudge on. It's been going on for a good while now, so it is probably getting a little burdensome, a little tiring, but
is it true that it's becoming harder to recruit in the field of law enforcement than it has in the past because of it?
No, definitely. I mean, because we work for the government, we're always trying to save and steward tax dollars. So there's always, times that we have to be lean.
Right.
It's in this environment, the way the world is now, it's easier for departments to give into that and start cutting back.
But some are saying, I'm just done. I mean, I watch a guy on YouTube because he has a homestead, but he was a police officer, full-time police officer. And when he wasn't working, he was doing stuff around his homestead. Right. So it was fun to watch what he was doing. So I kind of watched him week to week on what he was doing. But he, just this last year, he said, as a police officer, I've just come to a place that I just can't keep doing what I'm doing. Right. I'm not the age to retire. I think he had whatever minimum years you had to have. I don't even know what that is, and that's not important. But he'd gotten there, but he said, I just can't keep. And this is a believer.
Right.
He just said, just what I'm seeing, what I'm putting up with. And his point of view was, he was second guessing himself so much that he felt like he was putting himself in danger. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That because of the culture, because of what was happening, that he felt it was so unfair that if he gets in a very serious situation, he has to make a split-second decision. Right. That somebody then can go back and review in slow motion.
Right.
That he said, I just can't.
And deliberate on for days.
Yes,
weeks,
and I can't do that
months.
to myself. I can't do that to my family. I could put myself in a situation where it could ruin me. He says, and I just can't do that. So he went full time into YouTube in his homesteading thing. So that's, but I get that, and I'm hearing that, which is concerning to me. When, again, I grew up in an era where, for the most part, I mean, people saw it completely different than the mindset today. Right. And I'm not saying all that doesn't need to be discussed or talked about, which is what I wanted us to do today. So there are some thoughts recently from certain groups or whatever that the answer would be to get rid of the police, law enforcement profession. And I don't even know what they would say the answer would be. They're just saying we need to get rid of that. And I'm going, first of all, how crazy is that thought? Tell me, I mean, you're in it every day.
Right.
Any insight you would have to that thinking, or any response to that thinking that you would have?
Well, I mean, given what normal people see, which I'm sure in your profession you probably have better idea of stats on even just adults and their attention span. They're not going to sit and watch anything over, I don't know, what is it, 10 minutes or so?
Right.
So a lot of the times the information that we're getting nowadays because of technology is snippets. I mean, I know that, stories have become a big thing on Facebook and Instagram and even TikTok,
Right.
So a lot of people I have friends that send me videos that are it's very short clips, and it's like, it's not the whole story, but you're basing everything, your opinions on this.
Right.
Which is kind of like, and you and I have a good friend that coached football, and I would even think that he played any coach, right? So I would even think that as he's watching a game that somebody else is coaching, a lot of times he'll have an opinion, but he knows in the back of his mind he wasn't there on the field. He didn't see what was going on. He doesn't know what is going on around him on the bench with the other players,
or in practice,
what the chemistry is
previous
like.
week.
Right. And so there's some information that he doesn't have. Now he's an expert at what he did.
Right.
But there's we would have to agree that there's probably some information that he didn't have if he were on the field with them.
Right.
And so
so the decision the coach could make could seem like, what?
Why did he do that?
Yeah, why did he do that?
Right.
But we don't have all the information that coach who has a headset on, who's listening to some people who are giving him information in that moment, right?
Been around the players
There's injury
all week.
lists. There's all kinds of stuff going on that we don't have the facts. So the coach, and you know what? I've been there going, that was the dumbest call ever, that coach, and that makes sense. That's a good correlation there. Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that justifies everything that we've seen. I know that there has been some misconduct, which, like you said in the beginning, that's in every profession. But just to give you some perspective as far as getting rid of police officers, I heard a stat the other day on a podcast. And this has to do with California's post requirements. Post is a peace officer standards and training. Each state has, a state mandated requirement for training. But I heard the stat, and my numbers that I'm quoting may not be exactly on the mark, but somewhere around 650 hours is what California requires their police officers. 650 hours of training to become a certified police officer. That's just a basic street patrol officer. But on the other hand, I think it was somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500, maybe even 1,600 hours to be a barber or a beautician in that same state. So, I mean, you think about the many different hats, and I think a lot of people lose sight of what all police officers are expected to do. Because we are first responders. It could be a medical call, it could be a mental health call, it could be, but all those things can also turn into a deadly force encounter. And a lot of people don't realize that also police officers go to calls where there may not be a weapon involved, but the way we train and the way, and the reality of it is every call a police officer goes to, a weapon is involved. And why is that, you may ask? And it's because the police officer has a gun on his side. So, and I always, I was in training for 12 years of my career, and I've always told the recruits, I've always asked them, who does that gun belong to? And they say, well, it belongs to me. I said, not when you're on a call, it belongs to whoever wants it the worst. So they, at any minute in a call, a police officer could be struggling for their weapon. That's not unheard of. I mean, there's plenty of news stories and videos out there where police officers have been beaten, their guns taken and used against them. So there's always a gun involved. You have to protect that as well. So even in our defensive tactics and things like that, we have to be aware of where our gun is. So but anyways, going back to what I was saying, there's many hats that we're supposed to be experts in, but it's with 650 hours of training and then wanting to defund us and then less training, and it would be even a worse scenario, I would think.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Real Life, a ministry of Hermitage Hills. If you'd like to be a part of a community seeking to follow Jesus and experience life change, visit us at hermitagehills.com/connect. You'll also find ways to ask for prayer and how to take the next steps in your faith journey. We'd love to partner with you as you grow in your faith and experience real life.